Привет, друзья, and welcome back to Be Fluent in Russian podcast, episode number 41. Today we have a special beginning or special first part of this podcast, something that I think I'll be adding to other podcasts as well, and it's me sharing my experience, my learner's experience. So I recently started learning another language, which is Turkish. We have now traveled to Turkey for some time, and so we are now in Turkey. And I've looked it up, and people don't speak English that much in Turkey, of course. People speak it here and there, but it's not like I can expect a restaurant or somebody on the street to speak English with me whenever I need it. And so Turkish, I was like, I'll just learn it for my own convenience. And so I've learned some things along the way that I've been talking about in the videos, in the podcast, but more in theory versus experiencing them firsthand. And so today I want to share one crucial thing that I have found very useful in my own learner's journey. Before we get there, guys, there's some noise going around me right now, some outside noise. So if you hear that, don't let it bother you. I'm sorry that it's kind of coming on the mic if it does. If it is, because I'm not sure. I cannot hear what I'm recording currently. And so, yeah, just ignore it. Just listen to me, okay? So, that important thing that I have learned about the learner's, kind of my learner's journey was, what should I be learning? Turkish is not like other languages where the structure is the same, grammar is the same, just different words. It's not like that. It's a completely new language to me. I didn't know a word of Turkish whenever I started doing it. And so what am I supposed to learn? What word should be first? What word should be last? What's the order of grammar topics, and how can I master each grammar topic and things like that? So I pretty much had no direction. I didn't know where to go, where to start, and how it's supposed to go. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of, at least I couldn't find a good resource that would take me from the very beginning of my journey in Turkish until the very end, where I will be fluent in it. There's no such resource that I am aware of. I mean, hopefully in a few years we can be that path for you guys, for all of you guys learners. That's the goal for our Be Fluent class as well. Side, I guess, note. That's our vision for the future, is that you can come on our platform knowing nothing in Russian, zero, not even knowing the alphabet, and leave the curriculum or leave the program being fluent in it. So that's our goal, that's our vision, and I hope that one day we can provide that for you guys as Russian learners. But for right now, there's nothing like that for me as a Turkish learner. And so I was just sitting there wondering, okay, where can I start? Let me actually learn something that I will be using for sure, 100%. First was, of course, greetings. Hello, goodbye, how are you, things like that. Then, what's next? What should I be learning next? I'm not sure. So let me actually go in order of what I can imagine I will need to say to people. What they will respond back to me, I will deal with that later. But let's say I'm coming in a restaurant and I see a person, a host in a restaurant, who is supposed to seat you wherever you want. What can I say to them? Of course, once I greet them, how can I say, I want a table for 2, I want a table for 4, are you open, is there any available seats? And then once we sit down, how can I say, can I have a menu? Can I have a menu in English? Do you speak English? I don't speak Turkish, or I'm learning Turkish, so they can understand, and maybe we can switch to English. So I just simply imagine myself being in realistic situations, right? Then maybe at a taxi, how is the taxi operated? I have to, of course, first look up that I have to call a taxi, how to call a taxi, what apps I used for that. And then once I get in a taxi, what can I say to a person? What if I, have to go to the ATM and I have to ask for help? Hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? So all of the things that I just imagine that I would need to do while in Turkey. And how can I express myself while in Turkey? And so I've learned those crucial phrases. I've let that be my anchor, that first step that I took. And then from that, I pretty much stopped at that before we got to Turkey. That was my only, I guess, like 2 weeks of me learning Turkish. That was all that I've learned and practiced. Not only that I looked those phrases up, I've added them to my flashcards. I was flipping through them, which was incredibly hard as well because the words, they're just completely new. If English was kind of a little bit easier because I heard a lot of the words and phrases before. I just didn't know what they meant because we have a lot of English songs, maybe English movies and things like that. I just didn't know what they meant, but at least I've heard them before. Meanwhile, Turkish, not one word that I heard before. Okay? So it was very difficult to even flip through the flashcards. But fast forward 2 weeks, we got to Turkey. And that difficult time truly paid off. Truly paid off in me being able to express myself and ask questions and ask for a check at the restaurant, ask for a drink or main course and things like that, point at something in the menu and say, hey, I want this, and things like that. So it really did work. And so now my next step is whatever they respond to me, I have to add that to my flashcards. Or also, I'm using translator a lot. Yandex Translate has a dialogue option where you speak into the microphone, they see what you said, they speak into the microphone, I see what they said, and things like that. So whatever I have to translate and say, I'm adding that to my flashcards. Of course, if I remember, I will go back and add them later on in the evening or something like that. So sometimes, of course, I forget, but the main point is to start exploring new things that you don't understand when you see them, when you hear them, and not add that to your flashcards. Of course, you may say, of course, Fedor, duh, you're in Turkey. What are you talking about? I'm not in Russia right now. So how is this applicable to me? I would say it is 100% applicable to you because, of course, you may not hear the response of a waiter, but you can kind of imagine what you would say to a person, what they would respond back to you. You can go in your own restaurant, wherever you are, in your native language, and just simply translate that into Russian. So if you have an interaction with a waiter, let's say in Spanish, record that interaction on your phone, just the audio, and then transcribe that into Russian, and add the phrases that you don't know to your flashcards and to your vocabulary. So you can do it even without talking to a person. And of course, it will never be 100% the same when you go to Russia or when you speak to a Russian person, but it will be close. It will be close enough for you to be prepared, let's say like 70%, maybe 50%, but at least it's not 10% or 5%. So, yeah, I would say that approach that I took was very helpful to me, and I'm able to communicate with people on a very basic level. Of course, I'm still relying heavily on English and heavily on the translators, but I'm giving myself some time to make progress. And so far, flashcards have been a super great help, because you have moments when you learn a phrase, for example, and then you challenge yourself with a flashcard, and you don't know what that phrase is just by memory. And so maybe you spend 30 seconds thinking about that first time, and you still drawing a blank. Then you think about it for 20 seconds, then for 5, then for 2, and then you instantly know what the phrase is just by looking at the translation. And guess what? Whenever a person comes up to you, you have about 1 second to respond and to think about your response. And so if you've practiced that phrase, saying hello to somebody 10 times, you will say it automatically without even thinking about it. And so if you do that prep work in front of just your phone or your computer screen, with the flashcards or just actual paper flashcards, then you prepare yourself to do that live in front of a person. Okay, so I do encourage all of you guys to think about what is the potential use of your Russian going to be, and prepare yourself for that situation. Don't just simply go for, kind of whatever vocabulary is thrown at you, or all the new words from a song, because you may never say things like swinging from a chandelier or something else. Dream of Californication. Maybe you'll never say those words to a person. Maybe the vocabulary of a song will stay in a song, but think of things that you might say to a person on the street or a stranger, or when you go to a person, maybe a store associate, to ask where milk is, and things like that. More realistic things. So that was Learner's Diaries. I would call it that. Learner's Diaries, part 1. Now let's move on to another, I guess, new-ish section of the podcast, and that part is an exercise. So I challenge you guys with something. In fact, let's go with the listening part first, and then at the end, before we close, I'll give you a task to complete over, I guess, before the next podcast. Okay? So let's go into just the Russian monologue. I'll be talking about what I have experienced in the past month, and kind of important things and interesting things that have happened to me in the past month, and hope you can understand it. I'll be going, I guess, medium speed, not too easy, not too hard, not very, very slow, but not fast at the same time. So it should be challenging for all of you guys, A1, A2, B1 level. But if you're B2, C1, C2, I expect you to understand 80% of this. Okay? So let's get right into this. And after this, I'll give you a task until the next podcast. Okay? So, мы переехали из России в Казахстан на 1 месяц. Мы жили в Казахстане 1 месяц. И было много интересных событий. Много интересного произошло. Во-первых, мы ехали с моими друзьями. С нами был друг. Был один друг. И, конечно, мы все живем дома в Новосибирске. Мы жили все отдельно. У меня своя квартира, я живу с женой, у него своя квартира. И мы часто общались, но по телефону. Или 1 раз в неделю мы могли пойти в ресторан или просто увидеться. И поэтому, когда мы вместе поехали в Казахстан, было очень интересно жить вместе. Мы жили вместе. И сначала я думал, что будет сложно, очень сложно. Потому что я привык просыпаться, например, в 10 утра, а он в 11 утра, и поэтому первый час моего дня я должен сидеть тихо, я должен молчать, мне нельзя шуметь, I cannot be loud, потому что это первый час дня, он спит. И я думал, что будет сложно. Но было нормально. Потому что я подумал, что мы никогда не будем жить вместе 1 месяц. Никогда. У меня скоро, возможно, будут дети через 2 года, через 3 года. Может быть, он тоже будет с детьми, я не знаю. И, может быть, мы поедем вместе отдыхать 1 неделя, 2 недели и все. Но мы не будем вместе жить так долго. Извините, так долго. И после этого я понял, что мне нужно просто наслаждаться. Мне нужно, of course, is I need, мне нужно. And наслаждаться means to enjoy. To enjoy it, to enjoy that time. И мы вместе готовили. Я не готовлю еду. Я убираюсь. Means I'm cleaning up. Я не готовлю еду. I'm not cooking food. Я убираюсь. И все. И для меня это очень было интересное время. Мы часто разговаривали, часто играли в игры вместе, игры на компьютере, игры не на компьютере, карточные игры, card games, карточные игры. И было просто здорово. Конечно, нужно было привыкнуть друг к другу. Нужно было привыкнуть. We needed to get used to. Нужно было привыкнуть. Но потом все было нормально. И также мы жили в Казахстане, и я не хочу затрагивать политику, не хочу говорить про политику, но я думал, как люди будут относиться ко мне. Я не похож на казаха. Я буду там чужой или нет? Будут ли ко мне хорошо относиться или нет? Будут ли ко мне хорошо относиться? Would they treat me well? Would they treat me right? Would they treat me well? Или нет, or not? Я не знал. И поэтому я немного боялся. Я боялся, что люди будут считать меня чужим. They'll think of me as a stranger, as not a stranger, but an outsider. That I don't belong. Чужой means a stranger, but also the one who doesn't belong. Like we should, keep out or beware. И я не чувствовал, что меня не любят. Нет, люди хорошо относились, люди хорошо... У меня не было никаких плохих впечатлений о людях. Но иногда я чувствовал, что люди смотрят на меня странно, что я как будто... что я странный, что я... Это чувство, как будто мне здесь не место. This is not my place. Мне здесь не место. И это так и есть. Конечно, я не из Казахстана. И, наверное, как я был одет, как я разговариваю, что я не знаю культуры хорошо. Это, конечно, плохо. И, конечно, я никогда не чувствовал, что Казахстан — это мой дом, я могу делать, что хочу. Нет, я все равно гость. Гость is guest. Very similar sounding. Гость. Я гость. И я должен вести себя как гость. Мне нельзя делать все, что я захочу. Нет. Я должен вести себя как гость. Гость аккуратно ведет себя. Гость ведет себя тихо. Гость ведет себя... он не делает того, что делает хозяин. Если хозяин это делает, то, может быть, я тоже могу это делать. Но если хозяин этого не делает, я тоже не могу этого делать. Если ты... хозяин means owner, or I guess the host. And I'm giving this analogy, гость. And хозяин is the owner of the apartment, of the house. Гость is a guest. And so I'm giving this analogy with the country. If a person who belongs or is the owner of the country, in other words, the native of the country, or local of that city, and a guest is just a foreigner who comes in, as a guest to the country or to the city. And what I'm saying is, гость не должен делать, guest should not do, что хозяин не делает, what the owner doesn't do. If the owner doesn't, or if the host doesn't do something, you shouldn't do it either. Or if the host does something, it's a sign that you may be able to do it too. It's like if you live in a house and you're a guest, if the host watches TV until 2 a.m. and you might watch it until 2 tomorrow when he goes to sleep, maybe at 11, right? But if the owner goes to sleep at 10 and he never watches TV until 2, maybe you shouldn't too. Maybe you should be mindful of that. So, okay, going back to my Russian, enough of English, breakdown, let's go back to Russian. И поэтому я чувствовал себя как гость, и это нормально, но для меня это было в новинку. This was new to me. Потому что в Америке я жил 7 лет, я знал, что могу делать, что не могу. У меня не было чувства гостя. Я не чувствовал себя как гость. Но все равно мне очень понравилось, как было чисто на улицах, как много хороших, больших, хороших, красивых зданий means buildings. Мы жили в городе Астана, там очень много красивой архитектуры, и было очень красиво, очень приятно гулять по городу, ходить, красивые чистые улицы. И что самое главное, это были отличные дороги, большие дороги, мало пробок, и дороги были очень приятные для вождения. Я сам не водил машину, но я знаю, что если дороги плохие, то даже если ты едешь на такси, все равно ты чувствуешь, что дороги плохие. Но дороги были хорошие, широкие, большие, мало пробок. И также из-за того, что дороги хорошие, то ходить тоже безопасно. Ходить, гулять, ты знаешь, что ты в безопасности и что ты можешь спокойно гулять там, где тебе положено. Там, где тебе положено, where you are allowed or where you are supposed to walk around. And гулять means to walk around, to stroll, to go for a walk. И также для меня было удивительным, что все говорят по-русски. Все говорят по-русски. Я знал, что люди говорят по-русски, но я не думал, что так много людей говорит по-русски. И, конечно, между собой, если казах говорит с казахом, то, возможно, они будут общаться по-казахски. Но если ты спросишь у них что-нибудь по-русски, они тебе спокойно на идеальном русском расскажут, что, как, и без акцента хорошо тебе все объяснят. И это было для меня удивительно. Я думал, что люди будут говорить хорошо на русском, но не думал, что все говорят идеально на русском. Все. Возможно, конечно, это город Астана, в котором все говорят хорошо по-русски. Может быть, где-нибудь в более маленьком городе такого не будет, но в Астане все идеально говорят по-русски. И это хорошо. Ну, я не знаю, это хорошо или нет, или плохо. Для меня это хорошо, потому что я не говорю по-казахски. И также, что меня удивило means what surprised me, это насколько дорогими были квартиры. Потому что сейчас в Казахстане очень много русских, которые уезжают из России. И есть на сайте крыша. Крыша means roof in English. And that's a website called Крыша in Kazakhstan. И можно посмотреть на историю цен. История цен means the history of prices. Цена is price, and цен, история цен, is history of prices. И можно увидеть, что цена на эту квартиру выросла в 3 раза. 3 раза. И, это было понятно, потому что много людей хотят снять квартиру. У многих людей есть деньги, чтобы снять квартиру. Конечно, если есть спрос, то нужно делать предложение. If there's demand, you have to make the supply. You have to supply if there is demand. Если есть спрос, if there is demand, нужно делать предложение. You need to make a supply, or you need to supply. И, и поэтому очень трудно было найти хорошую квартиру, но мы нашли и жили там 1 месяц. И было все хорошо. Потом мы через месяц полетели в Турцию. Сейчас мы здесь. И наш перелет, мы летели 5 часов. 5 часов и 30 минут. И перелет был хороший. Не отличный, но хороший. Мы сидели на передних сиденьях в первом ряду. Первый ряд, first row. И там не было бизнес-класса, был один эконом-класс. И мы сидели первый ряд. Но мы летели в 5 вечера. Спать не хочется. И мы поспали, может быть, час или 2. Потом мы разговаривали. Просто сидели, разговаривали. И поэтому перелет был нормальный. Не сложный, не простой, но нормальный. Когда мы прилетели, здесь был очень приятный свежий воздух, влажный воздух. И пока что нам здесь все нравится, все хорошо. И посмотрим, что будет дальше. И дальше я также буду с вами делиться своим опытом как ученика, как я сам учу язык. И, возможно, есть у меня советы, возможно, есть у меня интересная информация вам. Посмотрим. Я буду очень рад с вами ею поделиться. I'll be happy to share it with you. Я буду очень рад. I'll be very happy с вами, with you, ею поделиться. To share it with you. Okay? And that's it. Enough of me talking, me speaking. I think it's going to be enough of Russian practice. And now on to the exercise for this podcast. I challenge you today to do something that I'm sure very few of you have done. And that is to go to a Russian city on Google Maps and translate 5 things. Okay? So, meaning that, of course, not just Google Maps, like the map itself, but to drop that little person on the street and see the street view. And find 5 things, anything, street sign, name of the street, an ad, and translate it all. So if you have an ad, okay, this vacuum cleaner, 50% off. How do you say 50% off in Russian? How do you say vacuum cleaner? You know, all of those things, when you see 5 things on the streets of Russia, translate them. And that's my task to you. And if you are so kind, you can send this to us at bfluentlanguages@gmail.com and say, hey, these are 5 things that I have translated. Here's their translation. So I can know that you have listened until this part and you have done the task. And the reason why I think it's important to do this task is because I'm sure that you'll find 5 things that you maybe didn't know before. Maybe you don't know how to say market or grocery store or flowers. You know, when you see a flower shop, you may not know how to read it and understand what it says. But once you learn it now, if one day you will be on that street, you understand what those things mean. And I'm sure that if there is a sign with a certain, word, that is going to be used somewhere else as well. So that's my task for you guys for today. I hope that you guys have a blessed day and a great day and all of that. And I'll see you all during our next podcast. And in fact, check out our Be Fluent Camp with the link in the description to this podcast if you want to learn Russian more in depth. We do a lot of grammar, vocabulary, speaking, and listening. So we take care of all 4 pillars of your Russian so that you can speak it well without mistakes and make rapid progress during the 8 weeks that we're going to be together. So check it all out with the link in the description, and I'll see you during our next podcast. See ya. Пока-пока.